Nokia once owned 40% of the planet. That iron grip created a fortress competitors couldn't even scratch. The devices released during this period were not mere tools. They became tangible symbols defining the aesthetic of an entire generation. The physical design of these phones spoke volumes about durability and straightforward, functional engineering principles. This dominance was not accidental. It was built upon a deep, ingrained culture of engineering excellence within the company structure. Brand loyalty developed organically because users trusted Nokia's commitment to quality over fleeting technological trends. Internal communication often operated in distinct silos, which inadvertently stifled the necessary cross-division innovation required for massive growth. Despite this internal friction, Nokia remained remarkably adept at anticipating shifts in the mobile landscape before they became mainstream realities. They recognized the coming shift towards touch interfaces, even as the market remained overwhelmingly focused on physical handset supremacy. The company possessed a deep, almost stubborn faith in its established hardware ecosystem, resisting the pressure to embrace entirely new paradigms. This internal rigidity created a critical blind spot regarding the rapidly evolving software and service innovations happening elsewhere in the industry. The concentration of power in the hands of these iconic devices cemented Nokia's status as the undisputed leader of the mobile communication world. The legacy of this peak dominance defined a unique chapter in technology history, built on hardware mastery and unwavering brand trust. Nokia initially focused its entire vision on established feature phones and robust mobile communication technology. This early commitment established a deeply ingrained culture centered around physical durability and simple, reliable design. The success of these feature phones created a powerful, almost monolithic brand identity across the global market. However, this dominance masked significant internal divisions regarding the future direction of mobile technology. Departments operated in strict isolation, preventing the free flow of necessary cross-division innovation and ideas. These organizational silos actively stifled the necessary cross-pollination of engineering talent and novel ideas. The focus remained intensely on incremental improvements rather than anticipating the radical shift coming from new mobile paradigms. The emerging smartphone concept was a radical departure, promising an entirely new interaction with digital life. Nokia's internal strategy failed to recognize the fundamental difference between a simple phone and a connected, intelligent device. The slow adoption of these signals allowed competitors to position themselves ahead in the rapidly evolving mobile landscape. The established ecosystem created an inertia that made pivoting away from the feature phone focus incredibly difficult later on. This is just the beginning. Subscribe to see more amazing content. Fire. This deep-seated complacency was not a failure of engineering, but a profound misunderstanding of the impending technological revolution. The internal structure, built for stability, inadvertently became the primary obstacle to necessary, disruptive innovation. Nokia possessed immense physical assets, but lacked the intellectual agility required to translate those assets into future market leadership. Nokia made a monumental strategic decision to align itself with Microsoft's burgeoning ecosystem. This partnership was intended to secure future relevance in the rapidly evolving mobile landscape. The immediate goal was to leverage Microsoft's operating system dominance for massive market penetration. This move signaled an attempt to pivot away from relying solely on proprietary hardware. This alliance required substantial investment in research and development for compatibility. The ambition was to create a seamless experience across both platforms for consumers. However, the financial commitment for this integration became immense. The expenditure on development far outstripped the immediate returns seen in the market. Internal silos within the company began to create significant friction. Different divisions struggled to harmonize their strategies for this massive external pivot. The leadership decisions made during this period were pivotal and ultimately restrictive. They locked the company into a path that proved incredibly difficult to reverse later on. Massive research and development spending did not yield the expected results. The diminishing returns suggested a fundamental misalignment between investment and market reality. The market signals regarding the emerging smartphone paradigm were largely ignored by internal strategists. They failed to recognize the seismic shift occurring just beyond their immediate view. The sheer scale of the financial gamble exposed deep structural weaknesses within the corporate hierarchy. Decisions were made under immense pressure, ignoring long-term stability. The partnership with Microsoft created an intense, high-stakes environment. Success depended entirely on synchronized execution across vastly different corporate cultures. Leadership decisions effectively locked the entire ecosystem into a single trajectory. Flexibility vanished as focus narrowed onto the mandated, predefined path forward. The massive R&D spend reflected an overconfidence rather than calculated risk assessment. This spending became a liability when the market began to shift dramatically. The internal structure prioritized short-term gains over long-term systemic health. This flawed prioritization ultimately contributed to the eventual collapse of Nokia's dominance. The integration process itself became a masterclass in managing internal resistance. The friction between old and new methodologies was palpable throughout the enterprise. Every strategic move was a calculated risk against an unknown future. The weight of these decisions defined the trajectory of one of history's most powerful technology companies. This era of high-stakes maneuvering ultimately set the stage for the inevitable decline. The pivot, though ambitious, carried an unsustainable burden of expectation. Nokia's once unshakable global market position began a terrifying descent into rapid erosion over several difficult quarters. The once iconic devices that defined a generation quickly became obsolete, signaling an immediate and severe loss of consumer trust. Internally, the management struggled to reconcile the public perception of engineering excellence with the stark financial reality unfolding behind closed doors. Early strategic bets on Symbian and feature phones failed to anticipate the seismic shift that was rapidly redefining mobile technology in the market. Internal silos stifled necessary cross-division innovation, preventing the company from adapting quickly enough to the emerging smartphone paradigm. The financial consequences of this stagnation manifested as massive write-downs, forcing the company to confront severe and immediate losses. To survive, the leadership was forced into painful decisions regarding asset stripping and divesting the valuable handset unit. Massive layoffs followed these divestments, signaling a brutal restructuring of the workforce and a painful severance for dedicated employees. The resulting cash flow crunch became an existential threat, draining the company's reserves and making survival incredibly precarious. Shareholders watched in horror as the perceived value of the company plummeted, leading to a catastrophic destruction of overall shareholder wealth. This financial hemorrhage exposed a fatal flaw, demonstrating that short-term gains could not compensate for long-term strategic neglect. The final reckoning arrived when the weight of these accumulated errors became undeniable, leading to an irreversible collapse of the once great empire. The legacy of this period is a stark lesson in the dangers of product focus over true innovation and sound financial discipline. History shows that prioritizing market share above all else ultimately leads to a devastating financial reckoning and catastrophic failure. True financial resilience demands a profound understanding of diversification and avoiding catastrophic single-product reliance in any market. This lesson is not merely theoretical, but a stark reflection of Nokia's ultimate downfall. The danger lies in betting everything on a single technological platform, ignoring the subtle shifts that signal imminent obsolescence. Nokia built an empire on one foundation, making them incredibly vulnerable to unforeseen global changes. To build long-term resilience, investors must actively seek out uncorrelated assets that provide stability across various economic cycles. This strategy protects capital when one sector inevitably experiences a severe contraction. Reading disruptive signals requires an almost prescient ability to detect nascent trends before they become mainstream realities. Ignoring these early warnings is often the most expensive mistake an organization can make. Nokia possessed the internal capacity to spot these signals, yet organizational silos prevented this critical information from reaching the decision-makers effectively. Innovation stalled within disconnected departments. Capital allocation discipline demands that resources are deployed strategically, focusing on high-potential areas rather than simply maintaining existing structures. This disciplined approach is the bedrock of enduring wealth creation. When faced with massive R&D expenditures, the true test is measuring return on investment against market trajectory. Nokia's spending often prioritized legacy systems over genuinely disruptive future technologies. Leadership decisions often determine the fate of an entire ecosystem, and inertia can be a deadly force. The focus must shift from incremental improvements to radical, necessary transformation when the future demands it. The strategic pivot toward partnerships, such as the venture with Microsoft, was an attempt to inject external vision into internal stagnation. Such alliances require absolute trust and a shared commitment to a radically new future. The financial gamble involved immense risk, betting the company's future on a platform that was rapidly evolving beyond their established engineering competencies. This created an enormous disparity between perceived value and actual market reality. Ultimately, the story of Nokia serves as a potent reminder that technological dominance is fleeting without adaptive financial foresight. True long-term success hinges on recognizing when established systems must be dismantled for new growth to emerge. Hi there! If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe. Smiling Face with Smiling Eyes Part 2 is dropping tomorrow. Subscribe for notifications. Loudspeaker.